What can happen when a kind child in a red hood meets a smiling stranger among the trees? In the Little Red Riding Hood, a simple visit becomes a tense lesson about trust, courage, and the danger of leaving the path. Welcome to Lingotales, where we will live the story and learn the language. A little girl with kind eyes walked near a quiet village as morning sunlight fell through the trees. She lived at the village edge, where birds sang early and warm bread scented the lanes. She was gentle, curious, and loved small things: flowers, shadows, and bright drops of dew. Everyone cared for her, but her grandmother loved her most of all, deep in the old forest. Grandmother fastened a bright red-hooded cloak around the little girl's shoulders inside her cozy cottage. The cottage stood under tall trees with ferns, mossy stones, and wildflowers nearby. Inside, Grandmother told stories, shared sweet cakes, and held the girl close. One day, she made the warm red cloak bright as berries. The girl wore it so often that everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood stood beside the kitchen table, holding a basket covered with a clean white cloth. Morning light shone across the room and touched the basket gently. Under the cloth were a small cake, a jar of butter, and fresh fruit. Her mother explained that grandmother was ill and needed good food. The girl was glad to help because she loved her dearly. Mother knelt to fasten the red cloak, while Little Red Riding Hood held the basket by the door. Before the girl left, Mother told her to walk carefully, stay on the path, and go straight to grandmother's house. The forest was beautiful, but it could be dangerous. Little Red Riding Hood listened, promised to obey, and stepped out onto the morning road. Little Red Riding Hood walked from the glowing village road toward the tall green entrance of the forest. The morning was fresh, and dew sparkled beside her feet. Her cloak swayed as the basket rested on her arm. Soon, the last houses disappeared behind her. Ahead, the trees rose like a doorway, and she followed the narrow path between roots, flowers, and singing birds. A large gray wolf with yellow eyes stepped from behind a tree near the forest path. His movements were smooth and silent, but he did not growl or rush forward. Instead, he bowed politely and greeted the girl as if he were friendly. Little Red Riding Hood felt a small uneasiness. Yet, she was too innocent to understand the danger standing in front of her. Little Red Riding Hood pointed deeper into the forest while the wolf listened beside the path. He had asked where she was going so early, and she answered honestly. She explained that her poor grandmother was sick in bed and that she was bringing cake and butter. When he asked where grandmother lived, she described the cottage under 3 great oak trees near a hazel hedge. The wolf pointed toward bright wildflowers, while Little Red Riding Hood looked away from the forest path. Behind his polite smile, he was already planning. He told her she was missing the forest's beauty and suggested that grandmother would love fresh flowers. The daisies and violets seemed close, and the day felt safe. Forgetting her promise, the girl thanked him and stepped into the grass. The wolf slipped quickly between dark tree trunks, while Little Red Riding Hood bent over flowers far behind him. He took the shortest way through the forest, moving fast and silently toward grandmother's cottage. Meanwhile, the girl picked one flower, then noticed another brighter one farther away. She did not see the trees growing thicker behind her or the safe path disappearing from sight. The gray wolf stood at the door of the quiet cottage beneath 3 old oak trees. No smoke rose from the chimney because grandmother was too weak to make a fire. Inside, she lay in bed under a patchwork quilt. The wolf knocked, softened his voice, and pretended to be Little Red Riding Hood with cake and butter. Grandmother told him the door was unlocked. The wolf lay in grandmother's bed wearing her nightcap with the quilt pulled to his chin. Before that, he had lifted the latch and entered before grandmother could understand the danger. He swallowed the poor old woman whole, then prepared his trick at once. He pulled the curtains around the bed, made the cottage dim and still, and waited for Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood pushed open the hazel gate while holding her basket and a wild bouquet. She had gathered as many flowers as she could carry, then felt frightened when she noticed the unfamiliar trees. After finding the path again, she hurried on with a guilty heart. At grandmother's cottage, everything seemed strange: the closed window, the silent room, and the heavy air. Little Red Riding Hood carried flowers toward a shadowy bed where the disguised wolf lay beneath the quilt. A low, rough voice had told her to lift the latch and come in. She hesitated, but she thought grandmother's illness had made her hoarse. Inside, thin lines of light crossed the floor. She set down the basket and approached the bed where the nightcap sat strangely low. Little Red Riding Hood stood beside the bed, staring at the wolf's huge ears, shining eyes, and furry hands. She came closer, confused by the shape under the blanket. The ears were much too large, but the figure claimed they helped him hear her. The bright eyes and gray hands frightened her more. Each answer sounded less gentle, and cold fear rose inside her. The wolf threw off the quilt and leapt from grandmother's bed with his sharp-toothed mouth wide open. At last, Little Red Riding Hood had seen that the mouth was far too wide to be grandmother's. The figure said it was better for eating her. She cried out, but he was too quick. In one great gulp, he swallowed her too, climbed back into bed, and snored. A huntsman looked through the cottage window and saw the sleeping wolf in grandmother's nightcap. The wolf's snores had rumbled into the garden, making the huntsman stop beside the hedge. He knew grandmother lived there, and the noise seemed wrong. Instead of shooting, he noticed the wolf's round belly moving. With a sharp knife, he carefully opened it, and Little Red Riding Hood and grandmother came out alive. Little Red Riding Hood hugged grandmother beside the bed while the huntsman stood in the peaceful cottage. Tears filled the girl's eyes as she ran to the old woman, thankful beyond words. Following the huntsman's instruction, she brought heavy stones from the path, and they placed them inside the wolf before sewing him closed. When he woke, the stones were too heavy, and he fell forever. Little Red Riding Hood walked the forest path home beside the huntsman as afternoon light softened through the trees. Before leaving, she sat with grandmother and remembered her mother's warning. Grandmother gently held her hand and helped her understand that danger can arrive with a friendly face. This time, the girl stayed on the path, noticed the flowers without wandering, and returned to her mother's arms. So the Red Hood carried more than a child home. It carried a wiser heart, still gentle but more careful on every path. You can find the learning materials for this story, along with many more stories, on our website at lingotales.app. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with others. And if Lingotales is helpful for your learning journey, consider subscribing so you can stay connected with our latest videos. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.